All right, the 2026 NASCAR season is officially underway. The 2026 Daytona 500 weekend is over. We have four different race winners from ARCA to Cup, and boy, what a finish to the Daytona 500. Tyler Reddick is your winner. Will, I know you are a big Chase Elliott fan, and I personally picked Chase Elliott to win this race. So I know you and I were both really excited there for a minute and then ultimately really disappointed at the finish. But what an exciting end to the race. What did you think about it all?
We're grieving over here, John. We're grieving. You know, been at this a while, and you've known me long enough that I'm harsh on Chase Elliott sometimes. I'm not this typical Chase Elliott fan, so when they tend to lose races, I get a little cynical. But that one hurt. That one hurt. It felt like we had that one, man. We were going crazy. We just left a Daytona party for it, and the whole place was going nuts. We were rooting for it. It was right there, and I'm sitting there the whole time thinking we're getting the yellow, and the yellow never comes like it did for William Byron. And then we get to the tri-oval, and he gets beat. Look, it's a great finish. It was exciting for sure. Disappointing for me, but what are you gonna do? That was the encapsulation of the weekend. A lot of exciting finishes. Nothing was too dull for anybody, I don't think. So
Certainly at the Cup level, I think looking at I got to give Fox some credit here. The camera cuts they made shortly after, they crossed the finish line and Tyler Reddick's finishing his parade lap and coming around through the grass of the infield. You see the thrill of victory with Reddick's crew, in 2311 and the jubilation that they're feeling, and then they cut to Chase Elliott sitting on the safer barrier
yeah,
just past where he crashed, and you just see the dejection there. And then a
probably
few
had the
minutes
wind
later, you
knocked out of him, man. I mean, he
yeah,
smacked the wall.
that was my first thought when I saw that. Actually, was like, first of all, it was like, okay, wow, Reddick won, and then it's like,
Hmm.
wow, Elliott just pounded the wall there, and
Yeah.
I'm like, man, that I hope he's okay, because I mean we know how hard of a hit that can be, and thankfully he was okay. By all accounts, everyone was okay from that crash, but man, what a wild end to that race. And like you, I was thinking when Elliott was getting pushed in the on the backstretch by Zane Smith, I knew that wasn't going to be the last push, but I felt fairly confident that Elliott was going to win at that point simply because
Hmm.
I felt like everyone else was actually a bit too far back to get a real run at first because it
Seemed too
felt like Zane
disjointed.
Smith. That's what I was thinking too,
Yeah.
but it's funny. I was listening to the interviews after the race. Michael Jordan himself pointed out Riley Herbst, a guy that had been much maligned by a lot of people, us included, for being kind of the forgotten person there. As a matter of fact,
Hmm.
I made a tweet on our account during the race Mike Joy was talking about during the fuel saving part of stage three, where the Toyotas were manning the front of the field, and they were like, "Oh, Mike Joy had said two of the 2311 Toyotas are sitting at the front of the field, and it's like Riley Herbst was right behind Corey Heim on the inside line. It's like we forgot about poor
Yeah.
Riley Herbst again, but he made the key push for Tyler Reddick coming out of turn four, giving him the
And
momentum, and then Reddick made a fantastic move. I mean, I feel like Elliott defended that very well, and if he had tried to dive to the inside to block that, he'd have been sent into the wall. And I mean, he was anyways, but
yeah,
I felt like he did all he can, and
he's kind of a
he just
sitting
came
duck.
up a
He
little
was
short.
he was one friend short, I think.
Yeah, and
I think if he had one more friend back there, I mean, he had Zane Smith doing everything he could just because that was just the position he's in. But I think if you have one more, even just one more Chevy or Hendrick guy there, I don't think, like you said, I don't know if anyone really had it to catch him and pass him without him cutting off that run and making the ultimate block. So I mean,
and and, and
what
I guess
are you
to
gonna do, And then he gets knotted up when Herbst breaks off from the spin and Keselowski's trying to take him three wide, and then all hell breaks loose and just man,
yeah. And then
pumped.
the last thing I just wanted to mention too, which I thought was really exciting, was like I didn't think Reddick was going to get enough of a run because I thought when he was coming off of four and instead of pushing Zane Smith, because Smith was backing up to him
Hmm.
when Reddick was getting that run, I thought it wasn't going to be enough because he chose to pass Smith, and I was like, oh well, it's over then. And right when I thought it was over, it really wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah, I genuinely thought we were going to get a caution. So don't look now, John, but the sport is rigged for Chase Elliott thing can officially die. Can officially die because if the sport was really that adamant about handing things to Chase Elliott, they'd have thrown that yellow there and then they'd be telling us in a press conference afterward, oh, it was a safety deal because this is what we've done in the past. We get those yellows. I think even last year we talked about like, it feels like they should let it go to green and then they let it go to green. And then after the fact, they're like, we should have thrown a yellow. It was a safety problem. So then they started throwing yellows every time. And you and I have talked about the consistency angle, for years now amongst the two of us. I'm not going to sit here and go they definitely should have thrown the yellow, but it feels like in races past that's one where they have thrown it in the same event that I don't even think that would have guaranteed an Elliott win. I think if they had thrown the yellow as soon as they have in the past, I think Stenhouse probably would have won again because Stenhouse had that lead for a fraction of a moment there. And then you see
So
Elliott
that
make that move on the outside that ultimately gave him the lead going to the tri-oval.
so that's an interesting conversation. I think we can get into that I kind of had thoughts about
Mm-hmm.
was that the way I felt like this whole weekend was officiated by the control room, if you will, was pretty consistent, and I think it was a kind of kind of opposite from what we saw last year, where it was fairly disjointed. I remember the duels with Eric Jones and
Mm-hmm.
Austin Cindric. They threw the caution flag like what was it, like less than 100 feet from the finish line, it felt like, and then they had that
Yeah.
massive pile up on the backstretch, and I think that people would have felt justified for them to throw the caution because that's what they saw the last time, and they just let it go, and you had three cars crossing the finish line and a whole bunch of wrecked cars behind them. So you know, is this a new normal for them? Uh, I think that the fans would prefer to see them hold the caution flag if the matter of safety is
Mm-hmm.
something they're concerned about, but it's tough because a lot of these are judgment calls too.
Right. Do you feel where do you lean? Are you a person that would rather you see a yellow there because it's something that's been a yellow in the past, or are you like if you take the consistency and the history out of it, are you sitting there going, I want to see these guys get back to the line before we throw that yellow? Or are you leaning towards the well, it's been the yellow in the past, so maybe we should have it be the yellow still?
I've always believed that we're here to see racing, and as
Mm-hmm.
long as it's something that is safe, I want to be able to see a natural conclusion to,
Yeah.
you know, however it's, however it's been run so far. So, if a car is flipping or I'm honestly, the way that first crash on the final lap happened, I kind of would have been okay with them throwing the yellow just because there
That's what
were,
I thought they were going to throw it for.
yeah,
That initial wreck on
because
that lap.
if you look back and you see pictures of all that,
Mm-hmm.
like there were, I think, like six to like 10 cars like involved, like spinning in front of the field. I i would have understood them throwing a caution there, but I'm glad that they didn't. I'm also glad everyone was safe.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough to, again, these are tough calls, and we've been hard on NASCAR a lot in the past, and I think that we have been deservedly so, but I also want to give them credit for this as well because it allowed for a very entertaining finish and one that I
Mm-hmm.
think I'll remember for a long time.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I remember saying to someone at our party, I said, "Okay, I kind of wish that this wouldn't be something where someone lucks, I don't want to say luck into a win, but this whole right place, right time by being the leader because you weren't wrecked when they throw the yellow versus I wanted to see that finish where someone went and got the win by making the pass for the win or by racing to the win. And part of that was racing to the line. So I'm not going to sit here and go, oh, hindsight's 2020 for Chase Elliott's sake. Yeah, I wanted a yellow. I'm sitting there in my dad's living room screaming for a yellow when he took the lead. I'm like, come on, throw it now. And they never did. And I'm just praying he'd hold on, and he didn't. But I can live with the fact that it wasn't like Tyler Reddick won because Chase Elliott lost. Tyler Reddick won because he got the right push, he took the right lanes, he made the right moves, and he made the pass for the win right when you needed to. It was the best timing of all. So that was one of the more memorable wins, and I know we'll get into the rest of that race here in a moment.
I guess the final thing I would say about all that is I think it's really interesting if you were to ever explain this to someone else. It would be weird to say, hey, the winner of the race was decided before they got to the finish line. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. So with that, John, what do you say? You want to get in some hot laps? Let's cover the news of the weekend.
Let's do it. Let's get right into it. I know we basically just had a huge breakdown of the 500, but you got anything else you wanted to add on that?
Chase Elliott fans, it's gonna be okay. We'll get through this together. Stick with us today. We'll get through this, and we'll be back at it in Atlanta. And we know who won Atlanta last time. So,
And on top of that, with this new points format, a lot of people have pointed to Elliott about someone that could be this could favor him. So I certainly
hmm
wouldn't be too down about this.
yep. With that, we're gonna get into hot laps. So the 2026 Daytona 500 is over, and Tyler Reddick is your winner. Following chaos and wrecks in the final lap, he runs down Chase Elliott in the trioval to win the first Daytona 500 for Michael Jordan, and it was the only lap he led all race long. It's the ninth win of Reddick's career and his first crown jewel. Austin Hill wins on Saturday in a dominant race where he leads most of the laps and sweeps the stages at Daytona for the fourth time in 5 years. It's his 11th career victory at a superspeedway and 15th total in the O'Reilly Series. Chandler Smith on Friday slides in from sixth to grab a last-minute overtime win in the Craftsman Truck Series, and this was Chandler's first Daytona win in the series and his eighth total in career. Jimmy Johnson announced that he's leaving the Cup Series for good after the 2027 Daytona 500, although he has not closed the door on racing in the future in lower series or other forms of motorsports.
I wanted to add
And
something
on
to that real quick. I
Sure,
I don't know if you saw Bob Pockrass's tweet, but he had said that they're going to have a third charter next year. I don't know if you saw that.
I saw some speculation that they would have a third charter, like the under the weeds thing, the behind the scenes thing is like Rick Ware Racing might be splitting off both of their charters and then signing a deal with Dodge potentially.
Yeah,
But
I immediately
I don't
thought
know
of the
about that.
Rickware
But
Racing. Well, it's just I remember the lawsuit with Rickware Racing that kind of got
right,
settled. It felt like this was on the horizon, so I just wanted to make
yeah,
sure I mentioned that.
yep. So, but in either event, Jimmy Johnson has two races left. I think he announced this year's Coke 600 and next year's Daytona 500. So if you're a Jimmy Johnson fan, you'll have that to look forward to. And it was announced on Saturday that the Daytona 500 was moved up by an hour to allow time to get the race in before the impending weather hit Daytona, Florida, which turned out to be the right choice as we
Great
completed the
choice.
race in great choice. We completed it in 200 laps, no overtime finishes, and I believe, John, it was reported not long after the race ended that it started raining there and was raining pretty good.
I think it was less than 15 minutes after they went off air at Fox.
Mm. So those are the news.
As we look back at the 2026 Daytona 500, Will, I know you and I talked a little bit about it earlier, but obviously we know Tyler Reddick won, but how how did you feel about the race in its entirety, whether it was the early crash, the pretty exciting moves that we saw throughout the early portion of the race with the wind, or the fuel saving we saw in the final stage. Can you give me a little bit of a holistic kind of view of what you saw yesterday?
So I think from my perspective, I think for what we've had at Daytona in recent years with the fuel saving and trying to balance that in your head where you recognize it as a strategy, but watching fuel saving races is like watching a defensive battle in football. It can be tough at times, but I think for what we've gotten here in recent memory, I was pretty satisfied with it. I mean, the first two stages were relatively aggressive. We saw guys, really on the edge, which I think is really critical for this race, is that it wasn't just guys off throttle running around in a parade the whole time. We saw guys kind of step into it a little bit. We saw some guys really play on the edge and lose control. The mixture of a couple cautions allowed for the strategies to get mixed up a little bit. So I think for my sake, I was pretty entertained at least through the first two stages. The third stage kind of started a little dry. That started to kind of feel like the 2x2 parade that we talked about before. And then once we got that caution midway through stage 3, then I think things started to rack up. So overall, I mean, I was okay with it. I don't have too many negatives about it. I mean, personally, and I know we'll get into it later, there's maybe a slight consternation over should there or shouldn't have been a caution at the end, but I think ultimately, I think everything went smoothly, no precipitation. So I'm pretty satisfied with that race.
Yeah, and we'll touch on it a bit later, but the fact that they got this entire race in after moving it up an hour because of the threat of rain, and then it
Mm-hmm.
rained, less than a half hour after they dropped the checkered flag. I mean, just that's great to see on its own. And then I think the fact that we've seen slight improvement in the racing product over the last couple years. It's been mostly better at Atlanta as that track has aged,
Mm-hmm.
but yesterday we
Yeah.
saw a combination of what seems to be the track aging, but also the very heavy wind, like historically high wind rate that we saw at Daytona that was reported yesterday. And it
Yeah.
resulted in guys really struggling to hang on to their cars. And I think what we've noticed is when there's off throttle time, not just at Daytona, but really anywhere, that's when these cars are really at their best. The racing is at its best. So the first two stages to have some really ill handling cars allowed for comers and goers. And even though there was fuel saving early on, it wasn't at the level that we had become accustomed to. That is what occurred in the final stage, which, yeah, that was frustrating, but the fact that we only saw that for one stage and it led to a really dramatic end of the race, I think was pretty exciting rather than what we've seen, early on when the fuel saving became the kind of meta strategy where it was like, okay, each stage is going to be defined by not being able to move and stuck in gridlock. It looks nice from
Mm-hmm.
afar, but nothing's actually happening besides fuel saving. And we actually saw something different today or yesterday. So I was happy about that. So as far as a holistic approach to the 500, I think this might have been my favorite race at Daytona for a Daytona 500 probably in the next gen era. I think from top to
Yeah,
bottom, this might have been the
definitely.
best one we've seen in the last 5 years.
I agree. I think, and obviously we would like it to be like it used to be, where you could run in packs of two or three. But I think for what it is right now, and with the fuel saving being a thing, because we're not putting that toothpaste back in the tube. It just there's the only real fix to that is the car. So to look at this in the sandbox of what this race has been with this car, I think it was easily the most entertaining and digestible race that we've had with the next gen car.
Yeah.
And I think, like you mentioned before, with all the factors playing in, it felt like guys were still on edge, even with fuel saving. Sometimes guys were really pushing the envelope for the stages. I think this race in particular was a huge win for the people that back the stage racing portion of it. I know that's a topic of debate amongst NASCAR fans, some old fashioned, some new. I think this was a big win for stage racing because I think if without it, we get that two wide parade for 125 laps or whatever it is.
Yeah, what I call yo yo racing. Just
Yeah.
two lines going back and forth.
Just kind of, if even that really, it's just one line builds, then the next line builds, and just kind of goes, and then yeah. So, what did you make? You mentioned the pit strategy. What did you make of the Toyota's pit cycle, the way that kind of played out in the third stage? Because I know at our Daytona 500 party, there was a lot of back and forth about whether that went well, whether it went poorly, and obviously they did something okay because they were kind of in the mix there.
I mean, ultimately, the fact that they won the race, I feel like that's going to be kind of forgotten about. But what I do know is that Kevin Harvick was
But Reddick,
reacting.
the guy that did win the race though, was the guy that didn't quite go with them.
Oh, yeah.
He
Well,
kind
he
of
came
got
with the
hung out.
Fords, didn't he?
I think he
I'm pretty
came
sure
with
he
that
did.
second
Yeah.
group, that the Fords. Yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying is ultimately it doesn't really matter just because the Toyota did win the race, and for them that's the bottom line. But
Hmm.
what I do know is that Kevin Harvick was reacting negatively, pretty much whenever any of these smaller groups peeled off. He's like, "Oh, it's not enough cars. It's not enough cars," and uh,
Even Larry Mack said something about it feels like you would need 6 or 7 to make
that's
it fruitful.
it feels like that has been the kind of idea for the longest time is that like
Yeah.
you can't have just one, two, or three cars. You also don't want 20. You want somewhere between 6 to 10 cars for the most optimum lap times. And, that's what's interesting is like, okay, when is the right time to pit? Toyotas have always been disadvantaged compared to the other manufacturers because they've been weaker in numbers. Even
Hmm.
with, I believe they had 10. 10? Wait, no.
They had
12?
8, 11,
They had two.
3 Legacy, 4 2311, 4 JGR.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. So they were higher. They had more numbers this time, but obviously Chase Briscoe was a non-factor with his crash earlier,
Hmm.
and
Jimmy
uh,
Johnson was really no. I don't think they showed him on camera almost all day.
he got caught up in that early wreck and ended up a lap down for most of the first half of the race, and
Hmm.
then obviously, like you mentioned, Reddick ended up not even being able to pit with that group. So that's just one of those things. I kind of like the interesting idea of like, okay, what's it going to look like when all these groups pit? But on the other hand, I do miss
Hmm.
when it was like, hey, you don't care who you're pushing or taking a push from, what manufacturer they're with. But it's just that's just one of the modern day aspects of racing, especially in the Cup Series, that you just have to live with. And for Toyota, just because they're smaller in numbers, it just means they have to be more on the ball. They have to be more efficient than everyone else. So, yeah,
Hmm.
it didn't work for them this time, but ultimately they still managed to get the right result, anyways.
Yeah. So fast forward to the end, we get the caution that brings out the white flag. Carson Hocevar is out front. He gets spun, collects a number of cars. I don't even know the number. And on television, you don't really see the culmination of that wreck. Have you gotten a chance to see how many people got collected and what that wreck ended up looking like?
So I saw it mostly from onboards, and most of the onboards I saw were from guys like Chris Buescher and Eric Jones himself, who got spun along with Hocevar. But so I guess what I can tell you is
Mm-hmm.
that there were a number of different cars. But what also happened, because I know Ryan Preece was one of the cars involved in that, and he ended up crossing the start finish line in reverse.
Yeah,
The
backwards.
the
The
other
old
thing,
Ricky Bobby.
yes, yes. The other thing that happened that was kind of crucial to recall about that was not only did you have the two cars spinning in front of the field, you also had William Byron sliding off the track and then kind of coming
Mm-hmm.
back up, and that's what you can see is that Byron slid back up into everyone, which I know that he wasn't going that much slower, but it did cause everyone behind him to slow down because you have an errant car flying into the corner and he saved it and everyone slowed
Mm-hmm.
up behind him, but that's what caused that sort of disjointed breakaway. And we'll get into the officiating in a little bit here, but that's one of those things where in the past it felt like they had thrown the caution for that, but this time they didn't,
Right.
and that's up for debate as far as whether or not you like them being able to hold the caution flag and waiting to throw it as opposed to just deciding, okay, now we're throwing it. So
Yeah. I'm just curious because I know on television we didn't really see we see Hocevar come off and we see maybe one or two other cars end up spinning, but we don't really see where they end up, which is fine. I can appreciate that Fox itself was like, if it goes yellow, we're prepared to show the yellow, but we want to concentrate on where these guys are in that moment. And I can remember in person, I couldn't see where they had wrecked or how bad it had gotten, and selfishly, I'm like, come on, throw it, throw it, throw it, throw it, which is crazy because just a few minutes before, I had said to someone that I want to see someone go for the win. I want to see someone, race to the win and not just land into it with the caution. Story of how my fandom goes. But yeah, I mean, I like you said, I know we'll get into it, but I was just curious if you had thoughts on like the Fox coverage angle of that last lap and how it ended up and
So what I'll say as far as Fox is, I actually felt like it was by their standards. I thought they did a really good job, and maybe not a great job, but a solid job. Specifically, I thought Mike Joy did a fantastic job on the final lap. It was to
Mhm.
me, it was shades of Mike Joy from what we recall, when we were growing up, as far as his energy, his ability to paint the picture, and have the drama build up to the final moment. And I actually thought Clint Boyer and Kevin Harvick did a good job of not jumping on top of him as he was calling the finish. So I just wanted to acknowledge that because we criticize Fox a lot. I know we haven't been doing the show long, so people may not be aware that we do that, but we do. So I want to make
Mhm.
sure that we give them all their due credit for what was a fantastic finish yesterday.
And it definitely got better with the side by side commercials because I felt like with the Clash we were going to a full screen commercial about every five
Yeah,
minutes.
that's a great point. I don't think there was a single green flag commercial that wasn't. I think they were all side by side.
I can't remember ever being a moment where we were in a full screen commercial and something happened of note that was a problem.
Yeah,
It
no,
never became a problem for me.
it was all the full screen commercials were under caution, I believe, besides maybe one. But
Hmm.
I don't think that makes sense. So I think it would have been all of them were side by side. So we saw that last year, I believe. That I think that changed once we got beyond the Daytona 500, and as you mentioned for the Clash, that was not the case. So we'll see how it goes. But as far as this race, I want to give Fox their proper credit because I thought this was a definitely something that the fans have been asking for.
Yeah, for sure. So we come into the trioval. Chase Elliott's leading, and Reddick's getting that push from Riley Herbst. He starts to make the move. Elliott blocks him up top. Comes down. Starts to you kind of notice he starts to like think he's going to eke down bottom to try and make the bottom, but I think it was just a hair too late. And then at that point, we mentioned it a little earlier. Elliott kind of runs out of friends there. He's kind of out of friends. There's no one there to really push him, and the Herbst car is kind of in and out. We see Keselowski go to make a third line. Is there a scenario like again selfishly, just playing hindsight's 2020? Is there a move that Chase Elliott can do differently there that you think changes the outcome, or do you think we're still talking about Chase Elliott being in a heap in the infield with his car?
So I've just pulled it up to make sure I'm looking at it directly. I've watched this several
Mm-hmm.
times. I think he made the right move to block Reddick up high because he knew that move
Right.
was coming. I think he had to do that. I just think Reddick had
Mm-hmm.
too strong of a he was coming too quickly, and I don't really think there was anything he could do. And the more I look at it, actually, Keselowski was coming so quickly, I don't really think there was anything Elliott could have done. I think he was just toast. I think
Right.
he was.
I
I
think
think
I
if
think at that point it's he would have had the caution to get him the win, or he was a sitting duck.
Yeah, there's no other
Yeah.
Chevrolet. The closest Chevrolet, ironically, is Stenhouse, who did end up finishing second. But you look at that frame coming off of four. The only other Chevrolet is
They
Stenhouse,
all end in a heap.
and he's the
Yeah.
last one in that group. If this was Talladega, he might have been able to get a push from somebody.
Hmm.
If he had been able to force that group to fan out, but he was in trouble no matter what. Even if he manages to hold Reddick down at the bottom and side draft him, I don't think he would have won. I think it would have been a drag race between Keselowski and Reddick. But of course, Herbst cleared himself when he wasn't clear on Keselowski, and that's what caused the chain reaction. So in the moment, it was like,
Hmm.
oh man, could he have done something differently? I don't think he could have. Hindsight's 2020, but I
I
really
don't
don't
think
think he
so
could have.
either. I think he did the best he could to be in the right place at the right time, but I think we've mentioned a few times now the missing piece was a teammate there. We seen it in Atlanta last year when he got that win in
Yeah, there was
Atlanta,
a
and he got
difference.
that great push from Alex Bowman, and it was the difference to blow by Keselowski. So we're seeing some similar guys in the front for these races. But I do believe that Chevy short on friends up front. Ultimately, Riley Herbst gave the push for the win for Reddick, and Michael Jordan acknowledged as much after the race. He's like, "Hey, we ain't here without Riley." So
Yeah, so definitely
all in all,
teamwork at a drafting track comes through once again.
yeah, hey, it's why you do it. So, John, real quick before we move on to the O'Reilly series, what's your paint scheme of the day? What's your livery from the Daytona
Ooh,
500? What's your favorite?
my favorite livery. Man,
Is that how you say that? I've always
yeah,
said
it's
livery.
it's it's livery.
Livery.
Our
It's a paint scheme. Good
our
grief.
our our, our
I
European viewers, all one of
was
them,
about to
if any,
say,
all of them, the
this is
millions,
America. Hell yeah, paint scheme.
the millions of our European fans will be disgusted with
What's
that. So,
what's your car wrap of the day?
man, well, you're putting me on the spot because I'm blanking as I kind of sit here and
I can
think
give you
about it.
mine. Give you a
Yeah,
moment.
why don't you go ahead? I want to pull up a spotter's guide, make sure I got picked the right one.
I think obviously one of the big stories of the weekend. You and I talked about it before. The Greg Biffle tributes we were seeing across the sport were really nice. We saw a lot of guys across all the series use that number font that Greg Biffle used at Roush Racing when he drove the 16 car. I think my favorite one of the day might have been on that 6 car, that bright red 6 in the Greg Biffle font with the green, the red, the white. I think that was probably my favorite of today. But I think overall the Biffle, the cars using the Biffle font was a really nice touch. Kind of definitely brought me back a little bit, especially seeing it on the 16 car. That brought me back quite a bit. I said to my old man, I was like, dude, I think if Kaulig got permission, I'd be using that 16 all year.
Yeah,
It looks a
it's a
lot
great
sharper.
look. I'll I'll
Yeah.
I'll piggyback off of that and I'll say the RFK number 60 car with Ryan Preece. I love the
Mhm.
vibrant colors, the purple, blue, and yellow on it. It's got that
Mhm.
number font. So that's my pick for this week. And then big picture, I mean I love Red Bull being back in the sport. I love a
Yeah.
good Napa paint scheme or livery. I really like what, and this might be controversial. I don't know how many people feel, but I love the Alex Bowman Ally paint scheme this year. It's purple as
Yeah.
always, but they've added teal, and you and I are
I
both,
like the teal in there.
you and I are both kind of pseudo, followers of the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers who are, their primary color is
Go
teal. So,
Shans.
that's something that's a soft spot for both of us. So I like that a lot.
Yeah, I've always been a big fan of the Bowman Ally colors. They always stand
Allies had
out,
a
and they've
lot.
stuck with it. And
Yeah,
they've stuck with it, man. They haven't gone too far from the model. Allies big, they're invested, so I've always liked that angle for them.
I think there's a happy medium between what you see with the Kyle Larson HendrickCars.com look that literally never changes, and the
Hmm.
William Byron Exalta Raptor one, which changes pretty much every year, even though it doesn't necessarily need to. I think the
Right.
Alex Bowman Ally schemes they change just enough, and I'd say even this teal look is almost like a bit too much of a departure, but I think they did a great job. So
I would
I'd
say
cast my
like a
votes
similar
there.
strategy to how Tony Stewart used to be with those Home Depot cars.
That's a
It
great
was this. It
comparison.
was Yeah, you get those orange, black, and white looks, but it was always modified just enough that it could distinct the time frame of when he ran it, but you still, when you saw that car, you know who you're looking at. And I
Yeah,
think that's what works really well for Bowman. So, all right,
that's
we're
a
going to
great
get into the
comparison.
O'Reilly series after a quick break, and we'll touch on He Who Shall Not Be Named. Now we get to talk about He Who Shall Not Be Named dominating the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race at Daytona, Austin Hill. He wins the race. It's his fourth in his last 5 races at Daytona. He led the most laps. He swept the stages, and we'll talk about it later in our fantasy video. But he had a perfect day for our fantasy purposes. For NASCAR's purposes, the only thing he missed out on was the fastest lap, which was taken by Raja Caruth. John, I know you didn't get a great chance to witness this race in its entirety, but we had a chance to see the opening wreck, and for those that didn't get a chance to see it, we didn't even get to the green flag, and we had a wreck. We
Yeah,
had the
I just wanted to touch on real quickly. I felt like most of the races this weekend were pretty clean compared to what we're used to. Uh,
mm-hmm.
the O'Reilly race was not, from what I understand, and the crash as they're coming to take the green flag for the first time was a bad omen in every way.
Yeah, so they waved the green flag. I would say the first few rows of people crossed the line, but one line got a slow start. They accordioned up a little bit, and Mason Maggio plows into the guy in front of him, totals his car. There was oil everywhere. It was a great big giant mess. So we had a caution before they even finished coming past the line to take the green, which I don't know as if I've ever seen that. I can't recall a time where it's happened that badly.
Certainly, I can't recall one on the first green flag of the race. Like, certainly you can think of them happening like on a restart in the middle of a race. I've never
Mm-hmm.
seen one happen like that, I don't think, as they're coming to the first green. That was
Coming to the green flag of the race, yeah.
it's like the equivalent of like 5 years ago when they threw the green flag at New Hampshire. They had run like 5 laps, and then it was like, wait a minute, it's raining. Why did we start the race? And they like 3 cars wiped out immediately going into one. But I've
Yeah.
never seen that before. That was a unique one for sure.
Yeah. Eh.
But it sounds
At
like
that moment,
my very well thought out pick of Austin Hill to win this race, paid off for me. I put a lot of
yeah,
effort into
yeah.
that one.
Yeah, you thought real hard about him, didn't you? Yeah.
And it looked like
It's
it was
it
pretty easy for him.
well, it was process of elimination your pick because you knew I wasn't going to do it.
We
I had
picked
to go
one
with
of
my
the
boy
two guys
Jesse
that
Love.
felt like locks to win it, and
Hmm.
surprise, surprise, one of them won it. So,
Yeah.
look, I
To
guess
to that though, Jesse Love was in the mix, right? The conversation is Austin Hill today, but Jesse Love basically is right hand man for a greater portion of the day, pushing him to most of those laps. And outside of Austin Hill's 78 laps led, the next best was Jesse Love with 27 laps led on 4 different occasions.
it really feels, and I guess it's not even accurate to say this anymore because it's been a longer period of time with more dominance, albeit in a different series. But it reminds me a lot of the restrictor plate dominance we saw from the DEI cars, specifically Dale Earnhardt
Hmm.
Jr. and Michael Waltrip in the early to mid 2000s, where it was like those two cars were always the ones to beat for a number of years, and then eventually they, if one of them didn't win, the other would. But eventually they got unseated, but this was just one of those instances from what I could recall and what I could remember is that a lot of the guys in the field should take a look at what Riley Herbst and Tyler Reddick did at the end of the Cup race to show
Hmm.
like, hey, you actually can beat this guy. You can get a run and leave this guy out, hang him out to dry and beat him. You don't have to just race for second place. I don't understand the mentality for some of these guys,
Well,
but
and we talked about it last week. It's going to be on teams like Junior Motorsports to step up and work as a team to gang up on the RCR guys. And we saw JRM up there pretty late in the race, and they just couldn't get coordinated. A couple guys got wrecked late. It just felt like that those guys were never quite 100% on the same page. Granted, in their defense, this formation of the team is relatively fresh, right? We don't have Connor Zilish anymore. It was Carson, not Carson. Well, we had Carson Grappel, but we had Raja Caruth in the '88 that was up there for a greater part of the day. They haven't. I mean, he doesn't have a ton of O'Reilly experience, but still, they never quite got it right and together. And there was a lot of green flag carnage, I would say, where it wasn't just straight up wrecking every time, but it was a lot of physical racing, a lot of guys bumping into each other. We saw some cut tires. Just I don't know. It just felt like they never got coordinated, and when they couldn't get coordinated, the JGR guys were already out of it. I mean, and I'm going to touch on them a little bit later too. But JGR was nowhere to be found in this race by the end of it. So I think the stars aligned that, like you mentioned, if you get a couple guys together, you get them moving, and you can try and shuffle out that Austin Hill team. No one ever did.
and
And
and,
it
and you
just became too
mentioned
easy for Hill to just get to the front and stay there and then let everybody else behind you just blow it.
and you had talked about Jesse Love. He wasn't in the picture at the very end, not at the
Hmm.
very front. But what happened was, I'd been looking at the replays. You had a Brennan Poole, Justin Allgaier behind him. It looked like they might have been lined up for a chance to possibly make a run at Hill, but a push by Jordan Anderson behind
Hmm.
those two sends Poole, out of line, and then eventually it pushes Allgaier up the racetrack. And I don't know if most people know this, but Jordan Anderson Racing is an affiliate of Richard Childress Racing. So once Anderson got under Allgaier, I don't want to say he wasn't going to pass Hill, but it certainly seemed more likely that he was going to work with Hill rather than try his darnest to get past him, because that's not just an affiliated car, that's the team owner of the
Yeah.
affiliated car who's getting engines, chassis, and whatnot from, the team owner of the car directly in front of him. So there was a lot of factors at the very end, but that's just kind of
Yeah.
a key example of what you're talking about and how this unfolded at the end.
I was really hoping that Allgaier would just go ahead and lay the push on Brennan Poole, keep it clean, and then push Poole to the win.
Well, what happened was
That's what I was pulling for.
they were trying, but then Anderson
Yeah.
had jacked up Allgaier
Just
a little bit. I think he
yeah.
wasn't ready for it.
But that's how these things go. So ultimately, yeah.
So we'll
Austin
do it
Hill
again
is
next week at
commanding.
Atlanta.
I hope not. Dude, don't do that. Come on.
We've seen this
No,
so
we're
many
gonna do
times.
we're gonna do RCR dominance next week, but it's gonna be Jesse Love.
We'll
Mark
see.
it. Jesse
We'll see.
Love. Truck race. So we'll get right into the truck race here. That one's won by Chandler Smith in an incredible 3 wide pass for the. Or was it 3 wide or 4 wide?
4 wide, I'm pretty sure.
4 wide pass for the win. So many, I couldn't even keep track. He gets a big bump from Majeski, and he cycles out in front to beat out guys like Christian Eckes and Giovanni Ruggiero. So I know you got a chance to kind of watch the truck race. Where did and this worked out for you? You were a big Chandler Smith guy, so
So the truck race in general, we had talked about it as one of the most hyped truck races we could remember, whether it was, the headliner had to be Tony Stewart with Ram coming back together at the same time, but then you also factor in Cletus McFarland, the YouTube sensation, making his first Truck Series start, Travis Pastrana returning to the Truck Series. I mean, we had 10 previous Cup drivers at this race, including guys like
right.
Carson Hocevar and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. making his Truck Series debut. It was a fantastic race from top to bottom. I know McFarland wrecked out early, and Tony Stewart wasn't able to. Well, I think he finished. What was it, second or third from last of the 37
Tony
trucks?
Stewart finished 36th. It was second to last, only
Okay.
beating Cletus McFarland, who you just mentioned,
Yeah, so
who kind of spun out on his own accord there, catching the
yeah,
apron and
and,
just
and that's a conversation we could have another time about whether he was qualified or not, and whether or not he was done fairly or dirty by the system. We can talk about that another time. But what I will say is that the overall racing product, again, we talked about the handling of these trucks. It felt like the handling was difficult for a lot of these guys over the course of the night, and you have the relative inexperience of the guys in the field, and that furious end of that furious finish coming off of turn 4 where it's John Hunter Nemechek and fellow Toyota Gio Ruggiero. And I was paying attention to Christian Eckes. You mentioned our fantasy, our fantasy league. I had Eckes and Chandler Smith. I was watching Eckes the whole time, thinking like, okay, like he's on the outside alone. Is he going to have a chance to win it? And as they're coming into the tri-oval, that's when I'm like, oh my goodness, that's Chandler Smith. Like he's going to win the race, like out of nowhere, with a big push
yeah.
from Ty Majeski, who we're also not used to seeing in the 88 truck. First time since 2000 that truck has not been driven by, well, aside from 1 year, has not been driven by Matt Crafton. So, in my opinion, maybe it's tough to say because I thought the Cup race was really good too, but I would argue pound for pound the truck race was one of the best opening Truck Series races we've seen at Daytona in a long time. The only complaint I had about this was, ironically, I just gave Fox credit for the Cup broadcast. I thought the truck broadcast was not up to par, more of what we've expected with them, given their struggles with commentary. But namely, and again, this is also something we could talk about, is the stage cautions leading to a bunch of laps being wasted under caution, and that makes me really upset, because especially with the Truck Series where you've got 20 lap stages in stage 1 and 2. The second stage, they went green with like 13 laps to go, 13, 14 to go in the stage. It's like, what are we even doing? So I don't know if you even want to touch on that right now, or if we want to get into that later, but
Well,
I
would
thought
say
the race
that,
itself was great.
yeah, I would say to that, like with the stage cautions, I think, like you pointed out, and you even put it on our Twitter, there's work to be done there where I understand that we don't want to do all that work and then put it green for one lap and then do it again. So if it feels like a caution is going to take us to the stage break, they do it. But like you mentioned before, I do think there has to be room for, if that's going to happen, we can say as much before the end of the stage and say, hey, this is taking us to the stage. You run it through to the however many laps it does. You give away your points or whatever. But it's just that one caution. We don't need to double up in one caution for the sake of a stage break. If the caution that happened to end the stage break happens previously, then I think you can use that as your moment to just then start green to start the stage. Because like you said, with the Truck and Xfinity Series, or excuse me, the O'Reilly, it's the stages aren't long enough to justify going yellow for at Daytona. What is it, 5-6 laps? That's
Yeah, I
that's a
mean,
long time to stay under a yellow when you could condense that down and get some green flag racing in, which we got a lot of great green flag racing in the Truck Series.
yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like the caution right before the end of stage, I think it was two in the Cup Series where they extended it to the end of the stage. That did not happen in the Truck Series, but again, it's just two different issues as far as like running too many laps under caution between stages, and okay, that gets extended if you happen to have a caution with like three to go in the stage. And it's
Mm-hmm.
tough because I don't like the idea of moving a stage. In essence, like, okay, we're going to move the stage up three laps because that doesn't really make sense either. I think ultimately you just have to. I think you just have to. I would prefer if they just got rid of stage cautions personally. I understand the argument, and we can delve into that in a bigger picture at a later time. But I just don't know how you can do it fairly because if you
Mm-hmm.
say, okay, within three laps, if we get a caution, we're calling the stage immediately. I just don't like that because I feel like that's just changing the conditions of the race kind of on the spot. And I understand that it would be known at that time, but I don't love that in practice. I might feel differently if it actually plays out. But even though I'm saying that, I can't have it continue the way it is. We can't be wasting 5 laps at Daytona under caution, 5 to 10 laps. We
Yeah.
gotta let's get it going, guys. Especially on
Mm-hmm.
Sunday because there was the threat of rain. It's like let's go, guys.
Right.
Let's like
Yeah.
I know it worked out, but like if rain had come in after that final caution with like four to go for the Daytona 500, I mean we'd have had a meltdown on our hands, and it would have been
Right.
justified in my opinion.
Yeah. And as for the Truck Series, look, hindsight's 2020. But you got all the opportunity you needed to in this race to get your commercials in with Hocevar spinning 36 times. I feel like he
He
spun
was the
out
caution
no
clock
less than
on
36
Friday
times.
night.
That's just like, man, I think he spun around more than any human all weekend long. The only person with worse luck than him all weekend long had to be Anthony Alfredo.
Yeah, and at least Alfredo managed to get an 11th place finish out of his second O'Reilly ride.
Yeah, and
So
he
happy for him.
bounced
That
out
was yeah,
Baccarella for it.
it was a
That's a
tough week for that
weird.
guy.
That was a weird headline.
Did
The Alfredo kind of bouncing Baccarella out thing.
It's not something it's not like impossible. We've seen stuff like that before. It's a lot of it is just sponsor and team driven. You cut a big enough check, they'll make a
You
spot
you
for
could
you.
even see it on the car, right? You could see they took a decal of dude wipes and just plastered it right over the whatever it was they had on the hood of Caesar Baccarella's car. It was very odd.
I
They really
also
just kind of threw that together.
I was just thinking. I remember Harvick was getting irritated with not irritated, but he was like, "Why is Carson Hocevar? Him and Logano were like, why is he racing up at the front of the pack when he was 3 laps down in the truck race?" I don't know. Just Carson Hocevar stuff. We love the
Because he
guy.
does what he's yeah. He
He's
races
great.
hard. Yeah,
It's
I think
it's a
he's good for the
refreshing.
sport, man.
Yeah,
He's
it's refreshing for both good and
hmm
bad reasons, I guess.
love him and hate him. It's okay. That's the beauty of it. That's why he's good for the sport because you got guys that love him and you got guys that are despise him because he races so hard.
All the other
What do you
drivers.
think, John? We ready to get into some first class return to sender?
Yeah, let's
Let's
do it.
start. Let's reward some people and start punishing people. All
Okay,
right.
talk a little bit about the officiating that we saw over the weekend. I felt was fairly consistent, and I personally, I think most racing fans I got to be careful trying to speak for a lot of people here, but I do feel like, generally speaking, we prefer if NASCAR swallows the whistle or they hold that caution flag without throwing it. Let the race play out naturally as long as it's safe. And maybe that can be debated with the way the 500 ended. But I think we're all in favor of, number one, consistency. We want to see what feels like the same thing every time. We want to know what we can expect. And then number two, if it's a 50-50 call, we want to see them race it to the finish. We want to see the race end under green conditions if possible. And I felt like that's what we saw, whether it was the Truck Series, of course, with that fantastic finish, and certainly the Cup Series race at the end as well. So I just wanted to give credit to NASCAR Control for the way that they officiated the racing this weekend. I thought they did a really good job, and I'd like to see more consistency as we move forward. So that's my first
I
class.
think, yeah, I think to your point, real quick, I agree. As a race fan, what we got on Sunday was what I wanted to see happen more often. Where, like you mentioned swallowing the whistle. I think that's, as a race fan, that's what you want to see. We had all three races get to the line this weekend. I'm not sure we've seen that at Daytona in recent memory in a long time, where all three get to the line. It's not that frequent because we're always seeing those cautions happen that get so ugly that you have to. Now, what I think I'm looking for is consistency with it, right? This is a conversation you and I have had off air in the past, where it's like, if you want to throw it in the name of safety, you do what you got to do, but you have to stick with that precedent. So I'm hoping, and they kept consistent with it all weekend, that that precedent is set for the season, where this is what it is. Unless there's an extremely extenuating safety concern, we're going to try and let this stuff go to the line. Selfishly, I wanted to see a yellow, but I think if you take my Elliott fanhood out of it, I agree. I wanted to see that thing get to the line. Like I mentioned, I wanted to see a driver go win the Daytona 500, not get the Daytona 500 due to the yellow timing. It was in the driver's hands and not in NASCAR's hands, and I think that's what I like about it. So I agree with you. I didn't have any crazy big issues with, yellows or no yellows or whatever it was NASCAR decided to do all weekend. I still sometimes get confused with guys that are sometimes involved or not involved in a wreck retaining their track position,
It
because I
feels like
know,
that's a thing with the entire industry that people are questioning
yeah,
sometimes.
I look, I didn't know what the rule was before, but it was my understanding if you're involved in the wreck, then you probably lost your spot. But I mean,
That's
me
generally how it's
scoring our
supposed to be.
fantasy teams. Yeah, well, me scoring our fantasy teams is watching some of these wrecks at the end of stages and going, well, how the hell am I going to score this now? I don't know who's where. NASCAR says here, Fox says somewhere else. It's a tough balance, but I mean, I'm not going to complain too much. I got to pick my battles, I guess, on that one. Um, my first class, John, we seen it in the duels. We seen it a little bit on Sunday with the Cup cars. We get guys that blow some tires, end up in the grass in the infield, and they get what we call beached. And we saw the introduction of what Kevin Harvick referred to as the Baja lift,
Great
where
name for it, by the way.
they, yeah, they plug in their little Baja lift and they put some air in it, and it lifts up the car so that when your tires are flat, it brings that car up off the ground. That allows you to drive out of the infield, as opposed to what guys usually complain about is being towed out, and the tow driver or that process doing further damage to their car or potentially taking them out of the race entirely.
Yep. So the first problem, that we saw with the introduction of the next gen car was the car's beached. I remember at Auto
Mm-hmm.
Club, that was the first non super speedway race, and it was like, oh my god, tires are blowing every 10 laps. Guys are stuck in the grass, every caution, and they're losing a lap because they have to wait for the truck to haul them away. That was one
Mm-hmm.
problem, and then the other problem was, okay, now we get them hooked up to the hauler and it can cause damage to the car. And we actually saw with Justin Allgaier, I don't know if you saw, Will, but Justin Allgaier's car getting towed back, and his race was over, so it didn't ultimately matter. But
He was going for a hydraulic ride there, if you're
yeah, the,
referring to
the
Sunday.
the strap snapped and it dropped the car. So like, imagine if the crew, if imagine that happens, 10 feet
Yeah.
from where they were dropping the car off for the crew, and that happened, they'd be Oh, they'd be very thrilled. I'm sure they are thrilled anyways that happened, but regardless,
No.
this
I mean, Allgaier
was
took ownership over the wreck itself, but yeah, I mean,
sure, but yeah,
he was
you
total. He
obviously
was
don't want to see
totaled. What
that.
are you going to do at that point? But yeah, I agree. Any opportunity you get to not get towed out and an opportunity to get to the pits and fix your car and potentially get on track, I'm for.
And that Baja
Let's do it.
lift,
Let's make it right.
lift, if I could make a direct comparison, it reminds me a lot of in IMSA and I believe in WEC, the World Championship. Those cars don't use like regular jacks; they use like air jacks, where you plug something into the car and then it like lifts the car itself. It's really cool. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
happy to see that we've.
Yeah.
It feels like it took several years too long, but I'm not going to knock them for coming up with a cool, tool that helps us get the
Just
cars moving.
and it's there was we'll remember a couple years ago there was talks about how do we fix this problem without it being an advantage, right? Because everyone's like, well, why don't you just send the tow driver with a couple extra tires and have them change the tires on the spot? And it's like, well, then they get some kind of weird advantage, or you don't know what they're going to do. I remember that being an issue a couple years ago, and they didn't quite have the best answers to this is just a clear cut thing we can do for anyone that's beach that can get them out. That's
And,
all we need, just to get them out.
and then the other part was like, what if there's more wrecked cars than there are utility trucks? So then it's like,
It works so much quicker that way.
Yep, yep. So
Get a couple guys out there, plug them in, lift the thing. I mean, the thing took less than 5 seconds from what I remember watching. They just threw the thing in there, you see the car lift up, and you're good to go, and you just wheel out of there. So I thought that was a huge underrated win for NASCAR that we saw on the weekend. Now we get into who were returning to sender. Who didn't give us the correct amount of postage here?
I'm gonna return to sender all the O'Reilly Series drivers not named Austin Hill and Jesse Love. In other words, the rest of the field, I'm not in favor of the way that they handled that race in terms of trying to team up and beat those RCR
Mm-hmm.
cars. I understand that they're the best cars out there and they're probably the best drivers at these tracks, but you've got to find a way to beat these guys. We saw it with the teamwork from Tyler Reddick and Riley Herbst at the end of the Daytona 500. You have got to find a way to not settle for second. Like, you can beat these guys. They're not completely, immortal. They're not invincible. You've got to find a way to get past them. And I understand we broke down the Jordan Anderson factor, so that might have been a unique part at the very end of that race. But the whole rest of the race leading up to it, I mean, we determine it was like all but like I think like 20 laps, not even, were led by those two RCR cars.
Pretty much. The RCR cars led for a grand total of 106 laps by my count.
Out of 120. Yeah, yikes. So yeah,
Yeah.
just
So I mean,
just again, I'm not saying, I know it's easier said than done, but I'm returning to sender the rest of the field. Let's gang up on these guys. Try to beat them, because if you go with them,
mhm,
all you're doing is guaranteeing yourself nothing better than a second place finish.
yeah. For me, uh, banner weekend to forget. JGR. Um, Basically, if you had a JGR label on you, you got wrecked out in some capacity this week. We had Hamlin get wrecked out. We had Christopher Bell get wrecked out. We had Ty Gibbs got spun out. I don't think he got outright wrecked. We had Briscoe, who was basically in the pit of misery all day. And then
Dilly
on the
dilly.
O'Reilly side, yeah, dilly, dilly, dilly. On the O'Reilly side, we had Taylor Gray finish 28th. We had Ruggiero get wrecked out. We had Sawalich kind of get in that pit of misery we just mentioned. Brandon Jones had an ugly wreck. That brought JGR's average finish on the weekend to 30.8. 30.8.
Ooh.
Ty Gibbs, their best finisher on the weekend, with 23. Yeah, not not good. And like we mentioned before, in the O'Reilly series, with all these guys being wrecked out, that was one less group of cars that could have gotten coordinated to take down RCR. So it kind of works hand in hand with what you were just mentioning about the O'Reilly guys not making a run. JGR couldn't make a run because they're not there. They're already done. And that's no good to anybody. And then we talked earlier in the Cup Series portion about the Toyotas kind of they ultimately ended up with a win, but the JGR guys kind of got disjointed. The pit strategy was a little off, and they were kind of in the mix, but then they got dwarfed in the middle line. And just all in all, I think JGR is going to go back to the drawing board this week, at least for Atlanta, and seeing how they can kind of work together better to try and get to victory lane and not finish on average 31st.
Special dishonorable mention. You mentioned Toyota. Toyota at the O'Reilly race. I think every single one in that race DNF'd. Right?
Correct. Correct. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure there was only one non-Chevy left
Well, I mean, there's
at the end of that
there's
race.
there's like 3 Fords in the whole field. It's basically the
Right.
Chevrolet Invitational. It's featuring Joe Gibbs and 3 Fords or
Mm-hmm.
something. So
I'm trying to pinpoint the Ford.
it would have been, was it the 5 of Luke Fenhouse? Yeah, it's the 5 of Luke Fenhouse. That's one
And
of
I
them.
wouldn't even know what Luke Ford. Yeah, okay. So Luke Fenhouse,
23rd.
highest finishing non-Chevy. Or no, I'm sorry, Daniel Dye in 21st. Daniel Dye was in a Ford
Oh, the extra
in a
AM,
part-time ride.
the
The
extra
extra
AM
AM
racing.
car.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
driven by someone who's full time in a Ram, not even in the same menu. Okay,
So on today's episode, we're going to introduce a new segment, John. It was introduced to me over the weekend by my father, and it's about going back in time and kind of touching on something maybe a little nostalgic or something historic to kind of, if people are new to the sport, something that they may not be familiar with, or if you're someone that's been watching the sport for a long time, it's something that might bring you back to the good old days. So for today's circling back segment, felt pretty timely. I had one planned to talk about Jeff Badine in the 1986 Daytona 500, but with the news breaking today being Tuesday the 16th, we heard today that Robert Duvall passed away at the age of 95. Robert Duvall, famously an actor who acted in Apocalypse Now, The Godfather, a lot of really good movies. But for the folks watching on this podcast, might mostly recognize him as Harry Hodge in the famous NASCAR movie Days of Thunder. So we're going to touch on Days of Thunder a little bit today because that's a pretty popular movie amongst NASCAR fans. For those who haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It's on Paramount Plus. It was released in 1990 with Tom Cruise and Robert Duvall, as we just mentioned. Duvall played crew chief Harry Hyde, Harry Hodge, who is based off of famous NASCAR crew chief Harry Hyde, who won a championship, 56 races, and 88 poles. And something he was also notable for was being one of the people that helped really form Hendrick Motorsports as you know it today. He was one of the first crew chiefs that they had for Jeff Badine in the mid 80s. Tom Cruise played Cole Trickle, who's loosely based on Tim Richmond, who was the driver of the time. Tim Richmond was a driver for Rick Hendrick. I'm going to pull up some stats for you here to help you kind of draw that connection. Tim Richmond passed away in the mid 90s, I think. At any rate, if you've ever seen the movie, Cole Trickle is a character who comes from open wheel racing in California and is hired by the character played by Randy Quaid, Tim Dillon, to race in his inaugural cup car, and they hire crew chief Harry Hodge, played by Robert Duvall. Um, this movie, John, you may have heard a lot of quotes from this movie that you didn't even realize that we use in racing today, such as "Rubbin' is racing." That was a big one. That one comes from that movie. There's a great montage of Harry Hodge just teaching Cole Trickle about the tires and when your car is loose or when your car is tight and how to manage that, how not to kill the tires by going full throttle the entire time, but racing his way, and we see a lot of that in the movie. There's the character played by let's see, Michael Rooker of Rowdy Burns. A lot of people have alluded that's meant to be Dale Earnhardt, and they have a bit of a rivalry there. There's actually a lot of stories in this movie that is loosely based off of actual events, such as Cole Trickle going around the track and Harry and the guys are all sitting eating an ice cream cone, and they invite him down to come have some. That is actually based on a true story with Benny Parsons filling in for an injured driver and coming in and having some ice cream with him. There's
Hell yeah.
there's all kinds. You're right. If you want to talk about, oh yeah, that's the one. There's cameos in the movie as well. Rusty Wallace, Gary Gant, Neil Bonnet, Richard Petty. All these guys were in it. if you've never had a chance to see this movie, definitely definitely watch it. It's very nostalgic. It's very 80s. The cars are cool. There's the whole, getting through the wreck type deal, the injury. I mean, it was a little ahead of its time. A very big portion of this movie was talking about concussions. And this was before concussions were really prevalent. Okay?
All I was going to say was if you believe the rumors, they're talking about maybe someday having a second one, right? Like a sequel. I remember
It's
there was
something
some
that's been
reports of
thrown
that.
around, and Tom Cruise expressed interest. I think the last we heard about it was in 2024. They were talking about doing it. Earlier last year in 25, someone mentioned that they would like to do a sequel that combined Cole Trickle's character from Days of Thunder in a movie with Brad Pitt's character in the most recent F1 movie.
That would be cool.
That it would be cool. Um, I don't think anything's come to fruition yet. I haven't heard anything else, but it would definitely be nice to see a sequel to that movie. Um, actually, yeah. So
Oh,
they
thank you.
they claim it's in development, but I haven't heard anything about it. Excuse me, you're saying?
Well, those who haven't watched it, make sure you check it out before the new one is released. Brush up on it before, so that way, as soon as it comes out and is released, you can have a chance to watch it right away and understand what's going on.
Yeah. So that is today's circling back 1990s Days of Thunder. John, we get to go over our race picks. Some went well, some did not. We took some shots, um, trying to strike gold at Daytona. Uh, let's start. What do you want to start with the truck series, real quick?
Yeah. Why don't we do that? We'll work our
So,
way up.
so John, you opened up with Justin Haley, and I followed up with Tony Stewart, and that one went up in smoke pretty damn early.
Ooh,
It
nice.
was not as soon as Cletus McFarland, but it went up in smoke, and the rooting interest for that race disappeared really quickly for me.
Shout out Jake Garcia.
Yeah, Jake Garcia, and
Man,
then you.
that was a bummer too because it felt like he was finally. They had been working on that truck the first couple stages. It seemed like they had
Mm-hmm,
finally figured things out, and he was finally starting to make his way towards the front of the field. And then, right as that
and
happened,
then
he
bang.
crashed out. And I was a little encouraged because it seemed like there was some potential interest on his part for possibly coming back and doing this again. And I think I speak for most fans when it's like, hey, like we'd like
Yes,
to see that
please.
guy race. You
Yes,
know,
please. Yes, I
yeah,
agree. I
sign me
hope
up
he
for that
comes back.
again.
I wanted more. And
Yeah, and
you had
I think
Justin
he did
Haley in
too.
yeah. You had Justin Haley in 22nd place. He's up
Yeah,
there.
what happened to that? I know
You know,
he led well, I think 20 laps, which was I think around I think that might have been
yeah.
tied for the most that day, right?
Yeah, it was tied with Hocevar and McDowell, I believe, for the
Okay.
most laps
Yeah,
led on the day.
so he
Yeah.
was up front. I can't remember. I think something had happened. I can't remember if he had gotten tagged in a wreck or something like that. But I knew
It
that he
wasn't
had
I don't
fallen
think it
back a
was so
little
much
bit.
that he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. I think there was a guy dropping back and it kind of killed that line. And then he got out of line. I think it was with the wreck he got out of line and then it just went straight backwards. So 1 minute he was there and the next minute he was abracadabra Holmes. He was gone.
Mm.
And I was like, well, so much for that. Typical for my fantasy team. But, what are you going to do? So
Well,
then we go,
the easy thing is to do. The easiest thing to do is what I did for O'Reilly.
yeah. So
That
O'Reilly,
was nice and
obviously,
easy.
we split the RCR picks. And as is tradition, the person I'm rooting against is the one that won. So you get the Austin Hill pick through. So you're officially 1 for 3 on the year. That's pretty damn good. I had Jesse
I feel like I
Love,
made a
who,
layup.
yeah, well, you kind of did. And he raced like it was a layup. He led the most laps. He swept the stages. So, I mean, that was pretty automatic. I thought maybe I had something for you with Jesse Love there for a minute. And then, he had a similar deal there at the end where he was in position. And then the way things fell, he kind of got dunced and sent backwards a little bit. And then he never really recovered.
This is unbelievable. I'm just looking at the I'm looking at the raw numbers right now. Jesse Love led 27 laps, which is the second most of anyone in that race. Obviously, Hill
Mm-hmm.
led 78, so he led a large majority.
Yeah,
Do you know how much the third most laps led by a single driver was in that race?
I do because I have it in front of me.
Isn't
Not
that
to
crazy? Four
not to
four
be a
laps by
spoiler.
Jordan Anderson, by the way. But
For
isn't
well,
that
if you scroll
unbelievable?
down, Sam Mayer led 6.
Oh, I'm sorry, 6. My apologies.
The point applies. it,
That's
it all
unbelievable.
applies. It's a stark contrast from what we got in the Cup Series race, which I know we got into in our when we unpacked it when we had 26 different
Yeah,
leaders. But so speaking
yeah,
of the Cup
a
picks,
Cup
we
Series
were
record.
yeah. So speaking of Cup, man, we were in the conversation here. I think on Saturday you and I were sitting there and we're like, man, we look really good right now because we had the RCR guys in the conversation, and then we had Chase Elliott win a duel, which you were on top of, by the way. You said he was going to win the race, and I think if
He did win
NASCAR
a
had
race this week.
I think if NASCAR had thrown the yellow when they had been in the past few years, you might have got that one across, and we might be having a totally different conversation today.
So close, so
Yeah.
close.
And I had Kyle Busch who went out the next day and won the pole. And he wasn't irrelevant today. He was certainly in the conversation here and there. He had his moments, but I mean, he wasn't like gone forever after the opening couple of laps. So I
Yeah,
think
that early pit strategy thing kind of set them back a little bit. But even still, they were up at the front several other times, but just couldn't break through the way that they wanted to.
yeah. So I mean, I think all in all, trying to predict Daytona is very hard, and in modern Cup Series, it's nearly impossible. I don't know how, unless you're throwing a dart at the wall, I don't know how you would have come to the conclusion of Tyler Reddick.
I
So,
mean, William Byron's one of, if not my favorite driver, and the last
mhm,
2 years, he's before this one, he had won the 500 back to back years. Both of those race wins were pretty bizarre in terms of the
mhm,
way that they happened because one, the caution was thrown in 2023 or excuse me 2024 right after they crossed the white start finish line for the white flag, and then last year, you know, he's like ninth when the big crash happens in front of him, and he somehow gets through first. So there
and
is
he
a
and
lot of
he
luck
wasn't
involved.
he was in that mix too at the end today.
He
He
was, he
was
was.
he was
I saw
there.
him.
He was
I
there.
saw
I was
him.
worried. I'm sitting saying to my dad, I'm like, please God, not again. I
Here
don't
we
want
go
to see
again.
him do it
Yeah,
again. Like, come on.
yeah.
Let's get something fresh. Let's get someone really wheel it to win it. And I got what I asked for, didn't I?
But it was
Jerk.
it was a pretty it was an up and down week of picks, and I mean considering
Hmm.
what we like you said what Daytona is, I think it covered a lot of what you come to
I
expect, some highs and some lows.
I think you get a proverbial pat on the back. I mean, Haley was in the conversation at the end, pretty late. You had the winner in Xfinity, and Chase Elliott was about 100 yards away. I mean, you were pretty on the button this week, man.
Alrighty, I'll take the compliment. I
I
did a
think
great
this week
job this
belongs to
week.
you.
Ah,
I
thank
think
you,
you
thank
get
you.
this one.
I appreciate that.
You got it. All right, John. So that's going to about do it for us today as it relates to the Daytona 500. Do you have any thoughts you want to go out with?
Well, I'm just it's been another great year of racing. It's always great to have the Daytona 500 and all the racing that we see that weekend. Coming
Hmm.
back from especially this off season being as tumultuous as it was. I felt we had two really good, great races. One that was okay, and then I felt even the ARCA race was kind of exciting. It's great to have racing and NASCAR back in general. So just thrilled to be back, and I guess I'll lead off with the kind of exciting announcement that my dad and I are going to be able to go to next year's Daytona 500. So that's the plan right now, is that we'll be there for
Nice.
the 2027 Daytona 500. So Tyler Reddick's Chumba Casino car, we'll see in Daytona, USA. So I'm excited
That's
about
cool,
that.
man. I'm excited for you. I know we've been talking about getting to a race this year, and we're going to try and make that happen. But it is cool. Get a chance to see the Daytona 500. You never pass that up. I,
Yeah,
I, I definitely all everything you just said. I agree with. Um, if you're a Chase Elliott fan out there, it's going to be okay. We're going to Atlanta next week. We know what he did there last year. Um, all things all things considered, he still finished fourth. He still got a good points day out of it, right? We didn't, like everyone wanted, we didn't spend 45 minutes talking about the impact on the playoffs, but the points are in good shape for the Chase Elliott fans. Congrats to Tyler Reddick. That was a great win. Like I said, big win for NASCAR. We get all three races to the line, which is what we all really want. I think at the end of the day, we want these races to get to the line. We had some great finishes. So yeah, I'm looking forward. The season's going now. We've got points. We're off and running. It's time to head to Atlanta.
Last thing I'll say too, if you enjoyed the Cup racing at Daytona this weekend, you're probably going to like it even more at Atlanta next week. Probably.
hmm I think those cars are definitely. I think they're going to be a little more on edge at Atlanta, given the
That
track wear and.
track, yeah, that track, it feels like it's just
Mhm.
made for this Cup car.
But yeah, it certainly Atlanta has been some of the better races that we've seen, at least for the super speedway parts of it with the next gen car in recent memory. So looking forward to getting to Atlanta and praying some of my hopefully my rooting interest this week will do a little better. But definitely excited for that. That being said, though, John, fun weekend, ready for another one. This has been Hauling the Mail.